Wow.
Okay, I'm going to call this village board meeting for July 16, 2018 to order. Roll call, please.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Sam Ballwig.
Here.
Sue Springman.
Here.
Bill Ranum.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Bill Willems.
Here.
Aaron Moran.
Here.
Okay, first thing we've got is confirmation of open meeting compliance. Julie?
Can confirm that all public postings have been made timely, official notices were provided, and it was made available on our webpage last week.
Okay, thank you. First item is consent agenda. Would anybody like anything pulled, or I'd look for a motion?
Approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sue Springman, second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, ayes have it. Anybody here that would like to address the board on an issue that's not on the agenda this evening?
I have no comment forms,
Okay,
just reporting.
just reporting, thank you. Todd, any?
No, not today.
I'd like to commend you on a well-run Waunakee.
Thank you. Thanks, I'll take just very little credit. There's a whole staff of people that take care of that and do a wonderful job, including our public works and our fire, EMS. Who else am I missing? I'm sure I'm gonna miss them. Fire, EMS. Big shout out to the fire for the water truck that day since it was quite warm. All the vendors, volunteers. It was just a great event for the community. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We'll leave it at that. Anything else? Next, we have WannaFest coming up here in 2 weeks. So that'll be another great event. And then Oktoberfest later on, early fall. Presentations. First one, we have discuss and take action on proclamation honoring Steve Kraus. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sam Ballwig. Second by, you gotta say it.
Second.
Second by Bill Ranum. Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Steve, could you come on up? Okay, we have a proclamation of appreciation for Steve Kraus. Whereas Steve Kraus, an active citizen of the community, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as trustee from 2003 until 2018. And whereas Steve Kraus' contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community. Particularly notable is his public service on the Finance Committee, Personnel Committee, Planning Commission, Police Committee, Senior Services Committee, and Utilities Commission. And whereas Steve Kraus' experience, leadership, integrity, and wisdom have earned him the respect and gratitude of the village of Waunakee, and whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, and the residents of the village of Waunakee benefited tremendously from Steve Kraus' diligence, resourcefulness, and commitment. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends its sincere and heartfelt appreciation to Steve Kraus, and hereby commend him for his dedication and outstanding service to the village of Waunakee, and wishes him well in his future endeavors. Let this resolution be entered into and made part of permanent record of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be presented to Steve Kraus. Passed and adopted on the 16th day of July, 2018.
Thank you very much. Chris asked me to say a couple of words. I wasn't going to, but I guess after that many years, I should say something. Well, nobody gets to stand here in front of folks like you without a lot of support to do something like this job for that period of time. And of course, it starts first with the family, and that involves my wife and my children. And then it also, in the next step, the real people that encouraged me to serve our village here. There's two individuals that I'd like to recognize. In fact, I'll thank them for giving me the opportunity for being here to thank them. The first is Rich Murphy. Rich Murphy is a former businessman here in town. He is a former trustee, former board member, and after all that, he still remains as a volunteer here in the community. Rich was the one that I reached out to first after there was going to be an opening on the board and asked him if I should interview for it. He said yes, and I'll support you for it and that sort of thing, and went through the process, and that's where it all started. And then secondly, of course, John Longmire. John and I, over the years, a lot of planning, a lot of phone calls, and you know, everything from, in my case, everything from the village center all the way up to the future library falls within that. And I'm very proud of all those things. There are foundation blocks here in the community that, although the exact buildings and structures may not be here 100 years from now, that process will continue on way beyond anybody's lifetime here in this room. So both John and I were very proud of all that. I also want to thank Chris Zellner. Chris Zellner, over the last couple of months, has risen above a lot of very negative things happening in this community by a very, very small group of people. There's been vicious attacks on him personally, very unfairly. But because he's a man of conviction and a man that believes in what he's doing, and his first love is this village, it's not anything for him. He's risen above all that, and he's stayed strong, and his leadership continues, and I'm very glad to see that continue, and I know it will also. And then lastly, I want to thank the 5 members here on the board that I served with, along with Gary, who's going to get up here and be embarrassed in just a minute, for the opportunity to serve with you. You know, it's kind of interesting. 2 years ago, after the election, John and I were talking about the members of the board, their experience here in the community, their love for this village, and we both agreed that in all the period of time we were on the board, that this board that we were with 2 years ago was probably the most talented and most selfless board that we had ever served with. So thank you, all of you. And then finally, I'd like to thank my mom and my dad and my agent, the people that worked on this campaign with me.
Steve
my
Krause,
daughter,
everybody.
I don't Thanks very much.
Can I make a motion, or can I ask him to make a motion from here? Is that okay? Or do I have to go back there and sit down?
You can do it from there.
Okay, so I look for a motion for honor proclamation for Gary Hertzberg.
I make the motion, we approve the proclamation honoring Gary Hertzberg.
Motion by Phil, second by Susan Springler. Gary, you could come up, please.
You want to take a vote?
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Julie. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Well, you're lucky. They could have said no. Okay. Okay, proclamation of appreciation for Gary Hertzberg. Whereas Gary Hertzberg, an active citizen of the community, has faithfully served the village of Waunakee as trustee from 2002 until 2018. And whereas Gary Hertzberg's contribution to municipal government is an indication of his pride in our community, particularly notable in his public service on the Finance Committee, Library Board, Parks and Recreations Committees, and Plan Commission. And whereas Gary Hertzberg's experience, leadership, integrity, and wisdom have earned him the respect and gratitude of the village of Waunakee. And whereas the village board, the employees of the village of Waunakee, and the residents of the village of Waunakee benefited tremendously from Gary Hertzberg's diligence, resourcefulness, and commitment. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board of the village of Waunakee extends a sincere and heartfelt appreciation to Gary Hertzberg and hereby commends him for his dedication and outstanding service to the village of Waunakee and wishes him well in his future endeavors. Let this resolution be entered into and made part of the permanent records of the village of Waunakee, and let a suitable copy be presented to Gary Hertzberg. Passed and adopted the 16th day of July, 2018. Congratulations.
Thanks. I'll be very brief. Again, like Steve, this job is very time consuming, and your family has to be pretty flexible to allow you to do this. So, you know, my wife and my kids, they missed me a lot probably when I was doing stuff, but they've not. One thing that has always been probably the strength of this community, I think, is the leadership of the village, and maybe the little part that I had in hiring a lot of these individuals, maybe is the best thing that I ever accomplished. You know, our public works and our parks, you know, under Kevin, if, I just had this experience in Monona Grove, and I'll tell us a little quick story. I was doing some yard work for my niece, and I cut down all this brush for her, and I took it to the street, and I called the department, and I said, well, I'm gonna pick up the brush, you know, like next week, so I can kind of plan this. And they asked the street I was on, and they said, well, no, brush pickup was last week, so it'll be August 16th. That was 2 months later. People in this community don't realize these guys pick up brush every week. Our level of services in Waunakee are outstanding, and it's because of the people. Our parks, Sue McDade, you can see the village center, and what a shining star that is for this community. Jeff Skog, we have more programs for the people of the community. Gosh, I wasn't gonna do this. But there are people here that work so hard. Bill Fredericks, he's involved this Parks Department and Public Works. We got a new library coming. This guy over here, if you think this new library is gonna be neat looking, Eric's gonna make this just a fabulous, fabulous addition to the community. So, you know, we build a lot of buildings and build a lot of roads, but it's all based on the people that do it here. So, thank you.
So I just have a few comments with regards to Steve and Gary. I actually went around the village and took some pictures. It's not everything they've accomplished, obviously, but there's not probably 2 board members over all the years that did more for the community as far as what we were able to develop, whether it be the police station, the fire station, the EMS, the roundabout, our highways, the village center. I took pictures of them because I wanted the public to understand they did a lot of service to our community. And, you know, it's difficult to lose the experience on the board. It was a little frightening to me. Joe and Aaron are wonderful additions to our board, but they're new. And that's always a difficult spot for me as the president, in having new people and acclimating them and getting them to know all the different things. And I can ask them for their ideas, information, but they don't have the knowledge necessarily. What's been great about Gary and Steve, they have been more than willing still to sacrifice and give information or guidance as I've asked for them for questions. To their families, my family understands it very well. We give a lot back to the community. They give a lot back as a result of it. They're the ones that really go unrecognized, so. Steve, where's Diane? She was here, did she leave? Gary, you shouldn't have cried, you made her walk out. I'm kidding. Gene, thank you. I saw Mark was in front there as well, so thank you guys for that. Appreciated, always. Yes?
May we be excused?
Do we get to vote?
Motion to adjourn, you guys? Okay, thank you guys. Okay. Okay, next we've got discuss and take action on proclamation recognizing 40th anniversary of Waunafest Run. Is there anybody here from Waunafest this evening? Okay, I'll be reading the proclamation at the Waunafest Run at 7:15 a.m., I believe, on the Waunafest Run day. So I've got those copies here. We just need a motion to approve those.
Move approval.
Motion by Sue Springer, second by Bill Random. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
There's a Waunakee meeting going on right now, that's where they are.
Okay, makes sense. Okay. Next, we've got license and permits. Discuss and take action on operator license applications for Kelsey Dushak, Gabrielle Betcher, Anna Skolitsky, Diane Anderson, Faye Riedner, Miranda Ladwig, and Lydia Howery. Julie?
The applications in your packet have been reviewed by the police department, subject to our policy on operator license approval. Background checks have been completed, and we recommend all of them be approved, subject to that policy and final review by the police department.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the license applications for all the ones that you read, subject to the successful completion of the approved responsible beverage training course and reviewed by the Waunakee Police Department.
Okay, motion by Phil Williams.
Second.
Second by Joe. Second by Joe Zitzelberger. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. First item under new business, discuss and take action on discuss and take action on request for detachment of Town of Westport, Whiteside property, 5147 Bong Road.
Yeah,
Kevin?
The action that we're requesting tonight is consistent with the previous action by the board in creating these lots. And just for clarification, actually, Joe sent me an email request, and I see where confusion could come in, is that this is only for 7 acres of the 104 acres of the Whiteside property. Groundswell is actually is making the purchase for the majority of the land, and they'll put a conservation easement over the property, always preserving that land and green space going forward, which has always been the goal of this area. So the areas that are being detached are just the new single-family homes, which one's about 3 acres, one's about 2.5, and then one's adding on to an existing property. And our planning commission didn't object, and the joint planning commission recommended approval.
Any questions, or I'd look for a motion?
I motion to approve the detachment request for Whiteside property at 5147 Bong Road.
Motion by Sam Bolig,
Second. Oh, go ahead.
second by Aaron Moran. I think I heard you first, but maybe not. I don't know. Second by Aaron Moran. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Discuss and take action on housing study proposal. Introduce?
Yeah, I'll do an introduction here. Actually, this is a couple years in the making, to tell you the truth. Despite a lot of recent action and interest and concern and questions about housing types, housing designs, and locations of housing in the village, it was a couple years ago that the village board established a goal, a strategic goal to review and assess the housing makeup of our community and consider policies going forward. So what we have completed to this point about a year ago is a housing inventory where CARPC assisted the village to complete a inventory analysis and identify what is on the ground today. Now, the challenge in doing that is housing permits keep getting pulled and projects keep happening. So that's going to be an ever-changing inventory, but we do have a base of knowledge that they performed. The next steps are then to evaluate what are the actual needs in our community, you'll hear some recommendations on how to go about doing that. And then what, based on those needs, are policy changes or policies we should remove or policies we should sustain in order to accommodate the needs that we have learned about, or accommodate the housing types and mixes that we desire here. So that is what's in front of us. There's a number of ways to go about it, but we have, Kevin and I spoke to folks from UW Extension who have a proposal that was included in your packet that would actually bring together an array of resources through the UW Extension system and the UW system to help us complete this work and probably over a 6 to 9 month period. So with that, we have a representative from the UW Extension team here today, and open it up for Kristen to fill us in on what the proposal is.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kristen Runge. It's good to see you all today. I brought some extra copies of the proposal that I'll hand out. There are 8 of them, or 7 of them here, and I have one up here. And I'm sorry, I miscounted. I was counting board members, and Todd, Julie, Renee, Kevin, Ed. Hi.
And I do want to throw in a little bit of timing before you really get into it. I believe if we proceed with the extension, it would be about September-ish.
Yes, that we would start.
That we would start. So understand that while we're getting a presentation today, we could certainly support this work and kick it off here today. But if there's questions that remain unanswered and you feel like you'd like to dive in deeper or get some more clarification, to carry this over to a meeting in August is certainly doable. I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with the direction that we're going to proceed in before we, put the foot on the gas pedal. So keep that in mind as we work through the discussion here tonight.
And I've also put my card in the folder, so if you have any questions after I get done speaking today, things that you think of after the meeting, please feel free to reach out and ask either via email, phone, whatever is easiest for you, text, however you want to ask. So my name is Kristen Runge. I'm from the University of Wisconsin Extension. I work in community development and economic development, and I co-lead the Community Vitality and Placemaking team, which is a statewide task team designed with helping communities address issues such as this. So when Todd and Kevin called me, we talked about what's been going on in Waunakee. I'm a Waunakee resident, so I've also been keeping an eye on the newspaper, and I've attended some of the public meetings. That there's a lot of decisions regarding housing that have come up. And we talked about the needs and issue. We put together this problem statement, really talking about the opportunity we have as a community to look at housing over the long term. And CARPC's housing study, which I've reviewed, and the comprehensive plan are both out there. They're well established, they're well grounded. So when we got together, we thought that maybe a common sense response might be to put together what we at Extension call a study group of community citizens. So rather than a community housing study where you hire a group of outside analysts to come in and evaluate, which has already been done, and draw recommendations, this is a group of community members who review existing data. Extension and some of our other personnel at the University of Wisconsin will bring additional supplementary data. And that study group learns over the course of a multi-month period a little bit about the issue at hand, reviews the data specific to their community, and then discusses in a public deliberation, discusses what the issues are, what their recommendations might be, where they might think that the community would benefit from additional information or additional needs. So it's an iterative process in that. It doesn't necessarily result in, Sue, I know you sent an email earlier today that I did not get a chance to respond to. It doesn't culminate in a comprehensive set of answers for a problem, but more a set of guidelines as to what the community values that can be used going forward in assessing different directions that the community is facing. And many communities right now are facing housing problems. In some communities, it's a complete lack of housing. In others, it's housing that is substandard. So we're seeing this across the state. This is not an unusual problem, but the specifics of every community's housing issue are unique to that community. So what we would do, what we're proposing to do, and this is, if you open up your folder, this is on the left-hand side right here. On the right-hand side is the problem statement and some of the rationale for the program. I'll let you read that over at your leisure. But on the left-hand side, we're looking at bringing in a series of people who have, through the University of Wisconsin staff and faculty, studied housing over the long term. The first person we would bring in is Dave Marcoulier, who is in urban, regional, and planning and design. He's a professor, one of our senior faculty members, and he has, over the course of his career, studied communities as they move from rural, small towns to exurbs to suburbs, which is the pattern that we've seen in Waunakee over the last 20 to 30 years. So we'll talk about challenges and opportunities in urban and exurban development and how communities have facilitated that, what are some of the issues they commonly face. The second thing, when we bring it into folks, that's real big picture. Second thing we would focus on is demographic trends in Dane County. We're one community among many, and we feel the pressures not just from what's happening in our community, but what's going on in Madison, or what's going on in Middleton, or farther out in some of our smaller communities outside of the outlying areas of Dane County. And then we bring in Matt Curis from the Community and Economic Development Department, and he's done a commuter study on in and out commuting in Waunakee. We've already started working on that in our department. So if you don't decide to do that, you get that as a freebie. He'll come in and he'll talk about in and out commuter patterns in Waunakee, and we'll bring in Bill Ryan as well, who is one of our state experts, a national expert in downtown retail development, and he'll talk about retail trends over the last 20 to 30 years in small towns. Once we've gotten all of that information, this big picture data, down to community-specific information for Waunakee, then Todd Johnson, who is in River Falls, he's a statewide specialist in land use planning and community development. Todd will come in along with me, and by that point in the process, we'll have done a community identity survey, a commuter survey of people who are working in Waunakee but living elsewhere, and we'll talk specifically about what we found through these two surveys and how they're relating to the issues in Waunakee. In addition, Todd will talk about some of the work that we've done across the state, communities like Kewanee, Princeton, Bailey's Harbor, upcoming projects in Ellsworth that we've got going on. We'll talk about kind of what the solutions we've seen in other communities that have worked. Once that's done, my co-facilitator Sharon Lesberg, who is one of the Dane County-based community educators, who will be here throughout this whole process as well. She and I will facilitate a lengthy discussion, a night-long lengthy discussion, and some follow-up among all of the members in the community who've participated. And there we'll talk about the issues that we've seen, that we've learned about, what the community members think some of their takes on the housing issue in Waunakee is, compile that in a report, and present it to you. So that's what we're proposing. What questions you guys have? I went through that really quickly. I did, yeah. I'm mindful that it's beautiful outside tonight.
Questions, board members? Sue?
This is interesting. It's an approach I hadn't thought of, and I think there's still a lot of other questions ultimately for the community. And but I'm glad to see us taking the first step in education. I think education is foremost of what we need. And the definition of affordability is a pretty broad spectrum. There are lots of different types of affordability. Is that a component of it? Because I think there's a huge amount of confusion as to what that means.
And
if we don't define it, no one's going to know what you're talking about. I mean,
it can mean a lot in different contexts. Oftentimes when we say affordable housing, it's a euphemism for subsidized housing or rental housing on the lower end of the spectrum. Sometimes we use terms like middle-class housing or workforce housing to note kind of the different stops along that spectrum.
I realize there are, but will you in this identify what it is you're talking about? Because there are so many different types.
We would ask the study group to identify what they consider to be affordable housing. We can identify, all of those points along the road. There's pretty solid evidence what a family making $40,000 a year with 2 kids can afford for a house. If that's a concrete number versus a family with the same 2 children that makes $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So that'll be, there's a certain external definition to that, but then there is what does that mean within the context of Waunakee. And when we say affordable, maybe what we're talking about is a community, I don't actually know the answer to this. Maybe we're talking about entry-level housing for young families who are looking to put down roots. That maybe a $400,000 or $500,000 house is not within their reach, but a $250,000, $200,000 houses. Maybe it's a rental unit that is more house-like rather than apartment-like. Let's see where the community comes up with that definition.
And when you do that, this is my concern, because I run into this all the time. It's hard to build affordable housing.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen without some financing or funding or subsidized mechanisms. And will that be talked about, or is that a subsequent? That's probably a subsequent discussion. So if you want this is what you have to do if you want to achieve it.
Yeah. There are a
That
couple,
is really the end question.
And there are a couple people on here. Dave Marcoulier is one. Bill Ryan is another. He does a retail real estate right now, but has also worked in affordable housing as well, that can speak to that. So I would say that probably the first challenge is to identify what that housing might look like in Waunakee, where that market lies in Waunakee, and if that is, we can think of when you think of a housing shed, it's much like a commuting shed. There is Waunakee proper. I mean, there are people who we would probably all in this room say are part of the Waunakee community that maybe live out in Dane, or perhaps they live closer to the north side of Madison. So when we talk about housing, we can speak about Waunakee proper, but we can also speak about where is our really housing shed coming from? Where are our community members drawing from? And if we don't have an affordable house here, especially when if we're defining Waunakee as a school district versus a village, now I'm getting into some more complex issues. Perhaps we can identify that might not happen in this particular block of development, but we can identify that as a mile or two away. I
think it's important that public understands you can't legislate that it happens.
No.
Some people think that you can. The courts will,
Well, and
stop that.
it's clear when you talk to builders too. We've talked to a couple of builders out in Sauk when I was doing a study out there last spring, that they can build the same home here as they built. They're identical in terms of finishes, and they sell it for more in Waunakee versus Sauk. And that's simple economics. That's demand versus supply.
Well, some of that is land cost or
Yeah.
fees and other issues, right? Okay. The point is there's a lot of issues
There are.
relative to this, so.
So a couple questions. Who should be involved under that section on here? You've got University of Wisconsin Extension will assist the Village of Waunakee in selecting study group members. Are you, what should be our process for selecting those before you even would see them?
Yeah. So Todd and Kevin and I actually kind of, when we got together, started, making a rough list of which groups might be involved, which community organizations would probably be represented. So we start there in terms of how do we get a representative sample of people from Waunakee, from all different walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all neighborhoods, and invite them to the table. And then once we've got that group identified and we've made those invitations, and this can be a big group, we're not talking 5 or 6 people, 20, 30, 40 people is manageable. These are some of the people on here who teach classes with 100, 150 students when they're on their teaching rotation. So a large crowd is something that everyone's very comfortable with. Once we do that, we also talked about then, making sure that we post notices in the newspaper, post notices at the Village Center here in this building, in order to invite people that might not be identified but might find this a very personally relevant issue and might want to be involved. Those are the people that we also want at the table too.
Yeah, I would note that as in that the village board would appoint that group, they'd send as an official body of the elected body. Those are all public meetings, open to the public, posted, as are all other committees.
We've also talked about videotaping it and making the video accessible so that if somebody was interested, couldn't make meetings, or was only interested enough to tune into 1 or 2 items that are on the agenda, that they would have the ability to view that information as well. As inclusive as possible is the way we tend to approach these.
So I'm assuming that our newspaper will probably report that people can be involved in this. And so as we get people that contact us, are those generally just accepted? We should include all those people? Or are we, how do you recommend we handle that? If we have, let's just say that we have 200 people that say they want it. Is that great?
If we find room to hold them, I would think it's probably great. I would defer to you guys to decide that, though. I mean, if you feel you have 200 people that should be involved, and these are folks that are going to be involved in the conversation, whether or not they're invited to this study group, then they should probably be there. And we'll hold it in the gym somewhere.
I think it's a good idea. I think we're all too close to the issue, and it'd be better to have somebody from outside look at it for a while for us.
Any other comments? Is that a motion?
That's the motion, to approve the housing study as proposed by the UW Extension at a cost not to exceed $3,000.
Okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a
Second.
Second by Aaron. Any other comments? Anyone? Okay, I'll call the question then. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you.
We'd come back then, Chris, in August to discuss a slate of participants, and I'll talk with you, and Kevin will work on how we exactly go about recruitment and soliciting and hearing from those who are interested.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, last we've got discuss and take action on village clerk position description.
Does anybody know that our clerk has this calendar that she's flipping and crossing off days? And I'm reminded of often.
Yeah, we're all
Get a
heartbroken.
different calendar for it?
Just make more pages.
Yeah, more pages.
I believe the number ingrained in my head is something like January 18th.
That's the day.
Okay, yeah, I can't forget it. But yeah, Julie is about to enjoy the world of retirement, which is a tremendous institutional loss for our village. I personally can say that coming in as an administrator, there are a few I've been able to rely on more than Julie about how is this person connected to that person? What should I know about this issue or that issue? And let alone all the things that a clerk does do for our organization, which is a multitude of things. So anyway, with that, we're doing some planning for filling the position of clerk. Anytime there's an opening for whatever reason, it's always important to take a slightly critical eye of the organization, the design, and the position. In this case, in your packet is a memo and a recommended job description, which has a number of tweaks. Most of them relate to things that have already changed in our organization. For example, we now have an HR manager position. HR used to be management by committee of sorts, with a lot of the duties with the village clerk, administrator, and finance. Now a lot of those are honed into HR. So the stuff related to that is logically also already moved. And because, yeah, thanks, I'm making my way through it here. And economic development items, because HR was able to be shifted from administrator to the HR manager, that created capacity for the administrator, along with a portion of assistant duties, to participate more heavily in economic development items. Therefore, the economic development has already kind of naturally shifted that way too. So those are represented in the changes. I think the notable change that hasn't naturally occurred at this point that I'm recommending tonight relates to management of our insurance program, all the insurance programs, including workers' comp, liability. You could probably list them better than I could, couldn't you, Julie? Property insurance. I'm recommending that by design, we shift that to the finance department, and I explain the reasons in the memo. With that said, I see the possibility that we may be able to recruit a clerk with a set of skills that perhaps we didn't expect. And that whether it's those insurance responsibilities or some aspect of other municipal duties, perhaps we can even rework the description again after we land that particular person. But without that knowledge, with the entirety of the organization in mind, my opinion, my administrative professional opinion, is that the finance department is the best location to suit the insurance function. Julie and I have had really good back and forth on this, and it's been good, healthy conversation, and I appreciate the fact that Julie's concern is that this leads to sort of, call it a little bit of watering down of the clerk position, removal of duties leading to sort of a less viable position. My perspective on it is it creates a more specialized position, but I can appreciate Julie's take from just standing back as a clerk professional. The industry of municipal clerk functions, I can see, and like I said, we've had good back and forth, and I don't think we necessarily see eye to eye, but I think she also understands the 30,000 foot view of the organization as a whole. But with that said, you're welcome to chime in as well if you care to, but that's what we're proposing, is a recommended change to the job description as included in your packet.
So I have two questions. Renee, as finance person, do you object to this in any way, or do you see this as causing a stress to your department?
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of it aligns with what Becca in our department is already doing with HR, workers' comp, that kind of thing. And it does align with some of the, we already have to track property for the audit purposes, so it fits in with that. So other than, not having the familiarity and the historical knowledge of it, I think we will be fine taking it on.
And we wouldn't foresee having to hire any additional staff to your department?
Correct.
By adding this, is that correct? Okay.
One advantage if this decision is made tonight to make this tweak, we have an advantage in Julie still being here with us for several more months. Don't think about leaving any sooner. And we have the opportunity for overlap training of the insurance function more thoroughly with Renee and her staff. So I think that will benefit us hitting the ground running in Julie's absence.
Okay. Board members, any other comments, questions, or look for a motion?
Motion to approve the village clerk job description as presented.
Motion by Sam Bollweg. Second by Susan Springman. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Sam Bollweg. Second by Bill Random. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everybody.